Konnichiwa, minasan. You are tuned into another album discussions. And yeah, today we are going to talk because we've been going in a chronological order, right? To continue sort of that sequence of everything, too. We're going to talk about the S.O.S. Brigade Quartet second album because going in order, this year I pretty much released an album every month. We started with a history lesson in January, then we went to My Unique Valentine in February, then Expressions of One's Heart in March, and then April. And it was actually released on the same day that the late great big Punisher released Capital Punishment. We dropped straight out of the archives, which was the S.O.S. Brigade Quartet, the jazz band, second album. And this one was actually all mixed and mastered by me. And I felt like it had a more polished, smooth, phenomenal difference to it because like there were some really great songs on a history lesson, but having everything under my own control with making this record, it really had a very consistent sound throughout the whole record, and it kind of ties everything together that much better in some ways. I kind of find it's a lot more. Everybody is kind of lined up, and because you only have a certain amount of people that were involved with this record, everything kind of connects the dots a lot more easier, and in my opinion anyway. I actually felt that the second album was a lot better than the first. Not even to knock the first. The first was really experimental, but overall I do find that the second had a lot more of a polished, smooth sound to it. And some of my favorite songs, making them as the SOS Brigade with the jazz band, I could honestly say were on this record. Two of my personal favorites were Rainy Evening and They're Gonna Eat Your Flesh, which was originally titled The Wendigo, but I was actually asked by certain band members because of superstitious beliefs, could you please change the title of that song? So to honor their request, I was like, well, we do just say like they're gonna eat your flesh as the chorus a lot, so we'll just call it that, right? You know, that way it kind of kept the peace within the group. They really didn't want me to call the song The Wendigo. But the idea of that does come from the Wendigo. Like, that's what the song's about. And that's why the intro even mentions the Wendigo, right? So, but yeah, we ended up changing it to They're Gonna Eat Your Flesh. Overall, I found that that was a really crazy, wild song. And then Rainy Evening was another one of my favorites too, because it just had a very beautiful melodic quality to it, a very smooth, beautiful, calming, relaxing instrumental piece, like a traditional jazz instrumentation standard. It was very beautiful in that regard. But yeah, a lot of the songs really resonated with me from this record, though. Overall, I can't lie. So as usual, we will go in order. We start with the trumpet salute intro, which it was using a keyboard pattern to create the sound of a trumpet with some other instrumentation to kind of build up the intensity and the tension for the start of the record. Apologize for the dog barking. She always picks the worst times to bark. She's just notorious for that. But and then it leads into Round the Clock, which was actually the second song we recorded for this album, because we were recording prolifically. It like probably just a few months before the end of the year actually came to an end last year, we had actually recorded so many songs, and they ended up shaping into what would be the albums that we will release this year, right? So yeah, we recorded so many songs nonstop, like working round the clock, right? So that's where the idea of the song came about. Round the clock was really like, man, every like week, sometimes several days throughout the week, we would get together and we'd bang out like two songs minimum, sometimes like three or four songs, and we just rip it. Like we were just dropping all these songs, like recording so many songs, right? So we really were working round the clock, like nonstop, just making music, right? So that became the idea of that song. And it was very unique because it was like a Louis Jordan meets hip hop meets jazz kind of vibe. And it was very cool to do that song. And then it leads into Spiral Dinosaur, which is a pure instrumentation composition, which is this wild, like really fast tempoed song that just has some really groovy instrumentation that we all just kind of vibed with. We had bass solos, guitar solos from the other two members, Byron and John, and then I did the sax solo and the saxophone like chorus on it. I laid out the main arrangement, and then I also did a vibraphone solo. So it's this very wild, epic, sort of like intense sound for Spiral Dinosaur that just really brings like sort of a creative focus on really coming out with some really like unique, wild, experimental like compositions, free jazz, but then it borders into that like intense Coltrane kind of vibe, John Coltrane sort of style, right? And then that leads into like a more traditional hip hop song with, of course, the ideas of jazz still being predominant in like the background instrumentation, Till They Stake in My Coffin, which also has an intro from Fats Waller, which was taken from the song he did when he recorded with Peggy Lee, the song On the Sunny Side of the Street. He was frustrated that it was his own original composition and he had like sold it off very cheaply for some hamburgers and he didn't get paid the royalties he deserved for it or even the recognition that he was the one who actually composed the piano for it, right? So because he was so frustrated and he was performing this traditional standard that should have been recognized as his own, he makes the joke in the beginning. He's like, "You don't like it, I'm gonna kill you." And then he plays of it and he's like, "It's a killer willa dilla." Yeah. So to have like Fats do the intro again was very funny. It was like always good humor to incorporate the Fats Waller. In fact, me and the band talked about Fats Waller a lot. I've even had the guitarist say like Fats really had some good music, and I agree. Fats was just a master, right? One of my favorite artists, which is why, like, after the song, which the whole idea of Till They Stake in My Coffin is because I'm Alucard, like, till they shove in that stake in the final coffin, I'm going to keep doing my thing. And I might do it in many different varieties of ways, but I'm going to keep making music, rich or poor, no matter how successful it is, to keep experimenting, bringing new ideas to the table, and doing what I love because that's my real passion. So that leads into Guru Stride, which is like the first stride piece that I recorded after, of course, we did a history lesson because I did have Fine Cup of Tea on a history lesson. But this one, I was really proud of doing the Guru Stride because, as usual, because the keyboard is so small on the phone, when I would play like the keyboard parts, I recorded both hands separately, like the right hand and the left hand separately, and then combine the two. But Guru Stride is really like me playing my best stride ever, in my opinion. Like I really ripped that. I'm the most proud of that composition as far as my stride pieces because it's the most intense, but also one of the most beautiful ones that I have ever played. I really like how that one turned out. There's other ones I really like as well, but the Guru Stride was definitely bang on. And then it leads into My Sugar Rose, which is also a reference, oddly enough, to a Fats Waller song he did called Sugar Rose, because there was this girl I liked at the time named Rose, and she wanted me to make a song for her. She actually blocked me, so I don't know if she'll ever hear it, even though it's released now. Like, I even tried to give her the link, but she like blocked me before I could even get it to her, and she totally chose some other person over me, which pissed me off at the time. But I did end up making her this song, and I used the organ and some saxophone on it. I sang it based on like Fats Waller's song, but I did change certain things. Like one thing was the idea of changing cotton with where the good bud grows, because I didn't want to sound racist referencing cotton. So I did make that change. I admit that. And then also the rapping verse was my own original idea based on the story with this person named Rose. And it turned out like really pretty. Like it was a more modernized hip hop upbeat spin on the original Fats Waller like traditional standard, right? So I think it turned out really unique and beautiful. And even though I had this souring relationship with Rose, I'm still very proud of how that song turned out, because the way you listen to the song, it could sound like I'm just calling the lady I love my Sugar Rose, which I guess he told me would now be that Sugar Rose, right? But yeah, that's kind of the backstory on that song, and it was a lot of fun to record that. In fact, even Byron kind of laughed. He's like, that was a good call, changing the idea of cotton to good butt. Not just because like we were all smoking weed and we were stoners at the time. He agreed that like it'd be kind of offensive if he sang that, being a white guy. And it's like, I don't want to be racist or offensive or step on anybody's toes. So I'm like, yeah, nobody could really argue with where the good bud grows. And also, Rose lived out in BC, where a lot of the good marijuana is grown. So it does kind of suit the idea of that, right? So that was the idea behind that. And then we did our orchestra anthem, which was a really cool song if you think about it, because it was the first time that me and the other members actually contributed vocals to a song, because the chorus has all these like wild solos around the chorus and whatnot to build the song of our orchestra anthem. But we're announcing the title. We are the S.O.S. Brigade Orchestra. We are the S.O.S. Brigade Orchestra. And we all did that in like a harmony of all three of us doing it, right? So it's like a synchronization of all three main members, because in the beginning when we did a history lesson, it's almost like we had a quartet, because we had like one member who would play like the fourth addition to the quartet. Of the three of us, we would mostly be a trio, right? But if David wasn't working on something, the other guy, Andrew of Smoke Signals Production, was doing something, which is where the quartet idea stemmed. And even though after a history lesson, it pretty much was just a trio, because I was always contributing some sort of other instrumentation on top of the vocals and the sax. I almost placed like an imaginary character as that fourth role of the quartet. Like you could look at it as it was either Vlad or Little Buckingham or Denine, or one of the alter egos would fill in that fourth part of the quartet in many cases on the song. You would look at it as that's how you could look at it, that there was still like an energy of four, even though there was only really three of us there, right? There's the embodiment of five within one within myself, right? So that's how you could interpret that. But yeah, that was a very mellow, smooth, groovy jam. I really liked how our orchestra anthem turned out, and especially like the synchronization of all the main members like contributing vocals. We hadn't done that yet. So it was a whole new spin of, okay, it's not just Super Comic Guru Alucard's band. This is our band. And our band has its own unique, wild, free-spirited, jazzy sound. So I think it's really cool for showcasing that. And then the next song was Play That Organ Son, which was really cool because I really was trying to go for a Fats Waller vibe, because he was very well known for the pipe organ. A lot of the beat is like hip hop with like really strong organ backing, and I even sing the ending of the song in like kind of a Fats Waller style. So Fats was a very big influence on this record, as I'm sure the audience has gathered already. And I think that's what makes it really cool. But yeah, Play the Organ Son was the idea of, oh, you got like blues going on, you're going through struggles, you're going, well, just chill back, play that organ, son, and relax. Like, play that organ, son, man. I want to take the tension off. And it was just kind of that vibe or idea of that. And that's what led to Play That Organ, Son. And then, of course, after that, you have the track Unappreciated, which is a whole bunch of different instruments all taking turns soloing. And it's very interesting because the way that track is set out, it's almost like a reminder of what was referenced to on My Unique Valentine, because we had not appreciated and then unappreciated. So it's like the difference in the two songs is one is purely instrumental, one has vocals, but the idea behind both of those is just that one's purely instrumental, one has vocals, because it's kind of exploring different angles or perceptions of almost the same concept but slightly different, right? Because they both roughly would mean the same thing, but it's how you look at it, you could interpret it differently, right? Like unappreciated could imply that it could still be appreciated one day, whereas not appreciated is almost more definite sounding. And that's how I looked at it with My Unique Valentine, is it definitely was not appreciated by Shannon, whereas unappreciated could turn into appreciated one day when people realize the beauty of the group and my music solo and all that. So that's how I look at it in that regard. And then it leads into Cumberland Avenue with the three alter egos, as mentioned, Little Buckingham, Vlad the Impaler, and Denine. And it's a song about my, ain't that something on Cumberland Avenue, which is a reference to the Bill Robinson song from Stormy Weather, because I really liked that. I had my, ain't that something stuck in my head. I was singing that and dancing to it a lot. And I just wanted to kind of reference that in the song. And then I thought about bringing it more to like a neutral, natural state of the environment I currently am in. It might not be ideally where I want it. Well, in fact, often I'm telling myself, no, you know what? I'm already in Japan. I'm not here anymore, which might sound crazy to the average person, but you know, to each his own. I'm using the law of assumption. Don't knock me. But looking back in retrospect, that was before I really became aware of all that. So I was referencing at the time being on Cumberland Avenue with these alter egos given their different opinions and vibes and sort of characters in the story I was telling about Cumberland Avenue. And then from there, we get into the instrumental composition Mass Hysteria, which has like this peaceful vibe that like everybody's going crazy because of COVID in the world, but really things are starting to settle down. They're starting to calm down. It's not really as bad as we made it out to be in the beginning. And that was the idea of making something sort of peaceful, like the eye of the storm. It's calm, right? Like that's how I looked at the idea behind Mass Hysteria. And then it's a very relaxing kind of tune, and there were a lot of relaxing instrumental pieces to this record, right? And then it leads into Don't Count Me Out, which is more of a hip-hop like Tupac-y kind of song. And it's really a cool vibe because it's like saying like, okay, I might not have accomplished all of the goals I intended to do by this point. I have made all these records. I've not become the biggest star as of yet. I'm not the most successful, but don't count me out. I'm still going for it. I will get there. In fact, I dare to assume I already am there, and I've already become more successful than I was previous years in my career, and it keeps going up, especially with the idea of my new single, Bokumo Aishiteru Yo, having now 2,600 views, and it keeps going up. Like I've already become more successful than I ever was off of just that one song singing in Japanese. So don't count me out. I'm still growing. I'm still going for the goal that I ain't never given up. And that's what that song's about. And it's got a very West Coast G funk kind of vibe to it, like some Dr. Dre, Daz Dillinger, DJ Quick, Warren G kind of production. I really like that. It's got like a hardcore Tupac sort of vibe. I love it. And then it leads into the Anishi Naabe LG, which was an idea that I came up with. It has like a Genesee kind of vibe to it, but also it was after talking with the members about wanting to reference like their tribe and Aboriginal culture and sort of mix that into the flavor of a jazz composition and instrumental. So that's how that song was born. And it really was us all contributing ideas to it as a unit, as a group, and to reference like, okay, like these are the guys playing in my band. Like we're all a band. We all got to take turns giving our own sort of reference of culture in different variety of ways. And I think it really is a beautiful melody. It stands out quite well on the album, and it's a really peaceful, soothing sort of instrumental composition, right? And I think we all did very great on that song. And that's why I was saying too, there are a lot of tracks that are purely just instrumental on this album that are really beautiful instrumental compositions. And this is definitely one of them. And then we get into Wentworth Trails, where it's singing about the Wentworth Trails. And then we have a lot of instrumentation solos throughout the track. And then it ends with this crazy rap verse about like, take them to the trails and give them scary tales, right? So it was really funny, like, because it ties back into the idea of a previous song I had done on Mahjong Titan of telling tales out in the trails, right? So Wentworth Trails, and it's kind of like referencing that, but in the Wentworth Trails, like near us where we are, right? From there, it goes into another instrumental sort of piece, which was inspired by Fats Waller in a way. It was also based on the idea that we were all smoking weed and we were stoners at the time. So, Kush Stomp. And the stomp comes from like the kind of jazz standards that they made back in the day. Sometimes they would call them stomps, like Porter Stomp, Fats Waller Stomp, which is where the idea came from in my case. And ours was the Kush Stomp. And it's this really fast, like piano and drums just going crazy, almost like just ripping it nonstop, like like 1,000 miles per hour, like faster than bebop, like that really super fast duper duper stride, but then also adding the drums keep the beat going with it. And it's wild, it's intense, and it really builds up the tension once again for what it leads into next on the record, which is the song I spoke about earlier, originally titled as The Wendigo, which we turned into They're Gonna Eat Your Flesh. And we all did vocals on this one too. Another one like our orchestra anthem, which is really cool. There were some really great solos on it. It was wild, it was intense. It had this like dark, sort of melancholy, wild, out there like vibe to it. Really dark, jazzy, bluesy kind of vibe. And it was almost like this supernatural effect of the song that, as dark as it is, it's so catchy, it gets stuck in your head. And it's almost like the idea of that transitions to like the Wendigo, like possessing you with the idea of greed. And like that's why I think they were afraid of calling it the Wendigo. So we did end up changing it to They're Gonna Eat Your Flesh. But the idea was really almost the symbolic of idea of like being weary and being aware not to succumb to greed as human beings, because that's what Wendigos also lead humans into doing historically in folklore, right? So the idea was to become aware and not succumb to greedy, selfish desires if they would like destroy another, eat the flesh of another, right? Because that's exactly what they do. So there is actually a deep, profound symbolism to why the song became that. And then I kind of feel like bad talking about it in such positive nature, but I actually really like that song because maybe the rest of the group didn't understand the vision or the perception of how I saw the song, but I actually thought it wasn't like really praising the Wendigo or giving it glory. It was more so saying be careful of it, that the Wendigo could like, you know, basically possess anyone who succumbs to greedy, selfish desires and basically is willing to destroy another for the sake of what they want. To be aware of that and not fall to the temptation of it. So that was how I saw the song. That's my own personal opinion. I actually got the request like, please take the song off it or change the name. So I was like, the song's too good. It's already finalized and it's about to be released. The least I could do was change the title. I couldn't really take the track out because it had already been finalized. The only thing I could do was edit the title. So that's what I did. It was already set in stone at that point. But then it leads into Rainy Evening, that beautiful jazzy instrumental composition I mentioned, which had such a smoothing, melancholic, like nice, romantic, relaxing vibe to it. I apologize for the train. Like I said, they just love showing up every time I do these videos. And you notice it's always at random times. It's never like the exact same time in the video. It's whenever the hell they feel like showing up, and they just do. So, anyways, I will try to ignore that. I apologize for any background sound that thing makes, because they just like interfering with my work, apparently. But back to the song, I really liked Rainy Evening because I considered it one of the most beautiful instrumental compositions I had ever composed and arranged. Now, as I mentioned before, I did all the mixing, producing, and mastering, all the arrangements with this as well. And this really had a beautiful romantic quality to this melody. And it makes me think of the idea of you're laying in bed, having a cup of tea, it's raining outside, it's night, but you're laying next to the woman you love. You might see thunder and lightning outside, but you're very relaxed. You're like, oh, well, I'm indoors, I'm out of the rain, I'm with the one I love, I'm having a nice cup of tea, everything is quiet, peaceful, and still. And that was the idea of Rainy Evening. So it's a very beautiful, romantic natured sort of melody to it, right? That's what I feel like the music is harmonically expressing within the idea of it. So next we get into I'm Eccentric, which was recorded actually around the time that we were still working on a history lesson, and I decided to switch that and move it into this album because it suited this album better. And this one, John ripped some really good guitar on it. I play some piano on top of it, and rip some piano and jazz like saxophone solos, and I sing on it. I don't rap on it, but it was the idea of singing like in a very eccentric Eric Satie kind of way, like, you know, making art for the sake of making beautiful art, not just to make profit, but to create something new, experiment like a scientist, do something different, which is the idea of being a gymnopedist, an artist who experiments for the idea of conjuring new sounds and combinations of sounds to make something that musically has never been done before. And that's the idea behind I'm Eccentric. Then we have what is more like a Japanese folk song mixed with jazz, Kyoto Yakuza, which was inspired by the film The Yakuza, hence why there's the outro with Ken Takakura. And the idea had a very dark, like intense, like it's still in the background. There's a lot of peaceful, jazzy instrumentation, but then there's also sort of that theory of tension, like that feeling of tension that something crazy could happen at any moment and it's going to just rush to the surface and get you. And that's what, like, the Yakuza, they move like kind of in stealth. They're very quiet, like ninjas or samurai even. Like, they come out of nowhere and they just, all hell breaks loose when that happens. And even though Kyoto is a very beautiful, quiet, calming stillness of place, the Yakuza was in Kyoto in that movie, and that was the idea that inspired that song. And as an instrumental piece, I'm very proud of that because it definitely bridges into the idea of something dark is waiting in the shadows to come to the surface. And you get that feeling of there's relaxed, beautiful moments, but then there's also that feeling like, oh, but things could turn at any moment, become darker, more intense. So it's coming straight out of the archives. Like, it's lurking in the shadows, right? And it's interesting because this really builds up the tension for the final track, which is perfect. And we actually recorded this one right around Halloween, funny enough. In fact, we made the joke that this would be the perfect song because it's like a club, dancey, jazzy, wild, like hip-hop sort of vibe to the song that you would expect to hear it at like a Halloween party. Like, if you wanted that jam to just get down, dance, and groove out to at a Halloween party, you know, everybody's dancing and dressed up in costumes. They're all dancing, drinking, having a good time, snacking on candy, like, you know, whatever. It's like this would be the perfect Halloween party song because it's like scary stories, scary stories, and it's really catchy, right? So it's like that was the idea of that song, like making the perfect Halloween party kind of song. And that was the idea behind that. That's why it's very groovy, danceable. Apologize for the train. They just love making noise in the background when I do this, but whatever, right? What can you do? This is why I am so happy and grateful to not be in Canada anymore, and I assume that I'm in Japan despite what my present reality would tell me. And that would sound like delusional. That would sound like I'm crazy. But to each his own. Maybe I'm crazy. Well, if I'm crazy, then I'm crazy. But I dare to assume, thank God, I'm not in Canada anymore because of these annoying trains in this environment that I didn't like here. And I'm so happy and grateful to be in Japan, where it's quiet, peaceful, honorable, and more respectful. Because I couldn't stand those damn trains in Canada. Pissed me off. So there you go. And I always try to see like the light-hearted side of life lately. And wow, I guess especially because I summarized all the tracks fairly quickly enough with this record. We've only got through like all of the tracks in about a half an hour, right? What I will say, because we will probably end at like the 35 mark once I say everything I meant to say, which is good because I'm actually pretty hungry. I can't wait to go eat. As you could tell, too, got on my Japan is the best t-shirt today. And with Straight Out of the Archives, the experience making that album was a lot better than the S.O.S. Brigade Quartet's debut because everybody was on point. They all did their thing. I had a lot more control. It was a lot more smooth, consistent. Everything was lined up. I felt better. Everything being in my hands turned out better as a result. And I'm really happy with the way the record turned out because it really is a more wild, crazy album. I would say this was the craziest of all our jazz groups albums, like especially because the instrumentations, the vocal songs idea, we really went all over the place, and it's very interesting. Musically, it's a journey, and it's like if you dig through the archives, you're going to find things that you never expect to find, right? And that's the idea of Straight Out of the Archives. And it was a really great experience working with the band and having full control to do things as we freely please. Like we banged out these songs like very quickly. It was natural for us to do it. And because I had scored the mastering deal with Lander, we didn't have to worry about the mastering. It was very easy to just get all the tracks lined up, master them, release them, put them out, and prepare them. And especially with it being released on the same day as Big Pun's Capital Punishment, it's almost like a tribute to Big Pun. As you could tell, a lot of Fats Waller references, Eric Satie ideas, Louis Jordan vibes, and it was just a really great record overall to work on. Like, I really enjoyed the experience of Straight Out of the Archive. In fact, I could say it would be hard to choose like a personal favorite of any of my albums. But even with the jazz group, because we would have released a full 5 now by the time November comes, I could honestly say, though, this would definitely be in the top 3 of the 5 we made. Like, I don't know that I'd put it at number 1, but I could honestly say if it's not number 2, it'd be number 3 at least, because I really, really loved how this record turned out. It's unique ideas, it's crazy, it's wild, but there were some of the best songs we ever made as a group on Straight Out of the Archives. That's my own personal opinion, but hopefully that summarizes the story of how I felt making the record and what the experience was like. And we did almost all of this pretty much right in my neighbor's next door attic. So, it was very close to home recording it, making it. Had some wild, crazy ideas. It was fun. We were having a good time. I mean, I don't smoke marijuana anymore, or weed as you call it. But considering we were having a blast. Every time we were recorded in the attic and it was studio time, it was a party. We were living like a nonstop party, making crazy, wild, great music round the clock. And it was just a hell of an experience that I'll never forget. I mean, I don't miss smoking marijuana, but I do miss the good times of us just chilling and jamming out together and making some really great music that was very unique and unlike anything I had ever made in my career, but also unlike anything I think the world had ever heard before. So definitely check out Straight Out of the Archives on YouTube under the S.O.S. Brigade Quartet channel.
Hi.
I'm on live right now, Michelle. Sorry about that. I'm almost concluding the show anyway, but yeah, my mom, I guess, wants to talk to me about something. So as I conclude this, I will just say, please check out the album on YouTube. As I was mentioning before, there was the knock at the door, but also that you can follow the links below in the description if you're interested in supporting the album. Please do, because especially artists who are not on major record labels or backed by management, a marketing team, or promoters, it's hard for us to always get the funds to keep making this great music. And obviously this is what I love, this is what I want to do. I want to keep making more great music for all of you as the audience of the internet and the world to enjoy. So definitely check out the album if you like it. Definitely feel free to support if you are able to, and I would really appreciate it. And thanks for all the support so far with every endeavor and every record I've made in my career and with the SOS Brigade Quartet. Domo arigato, minasan. Till next time, Super Kami Guru Alucard, peace out. Matane.